So I am making a cardigan for my son, and I actually just finished it up today, or at least the body of it. So the only part that I have to do now is cut my steek and then put in a zipper. So in the middle of the stockinette on the front of the sweater, you'll see that there are 3 purled stitches. And the reason for that is because that is my little reminder of where I'm going to cut my steek. So on the reverse side, I have a nice row, or 3 stitch wide row of stockinette going all the way up in between the reverse stockinette. And there it is. So I'm going to turn this inside out, and then I can show you guys how I do my steek. And here's my steek stitches running down the middle. And you'll see that I have 3 of them coming down here into the ribbing. So what your steek stitches are is there's 3 stitches. This middle stitch is the most important one, or at least that's the one that you have to think of. And the way that a steek works is that you are basically securing your stitches so that way when you cut down the middle, nothing happens. Nothing moves, everything stays exactly where you put it when you originally knit the sweater. So this steek stitch, this one straight down the middle here, is going to be pretty important because what I'm going to be doing is securing half of it to this half of the sweater, and then the other half of it to the other half of the sweater, and then I'll be snipping the ladders going down between the 2. And the way that I like to do that, you can do it with a sewing machine. Me personally, I don't trust myself with the sewing machine, let alone sewing my sweater that I just finished, so I just don't want to fight the machine with that. I don't know how to work the machine well enough to feel comfortable doing it, but I do know how to crochet, and I do know with crochet that if I crochet it and I don't like it, I can tear it out, and that's pretty big for me. So what I'm going to do is show you how to anchor this stitch to the one below it using a crochet hook. This one is, I can't even read the size. It's a B, but I mean the size doesn't matter. It's just a matter of finding one that's small enough to go into the stitches that you have going on and to pick up the thread that you have. And the yarn that I'm going to be using to show you guys how to do it, not the one for the finished sweater, is some just contrasting fingering weight so you can see what you're doing. And I encourage on the first sweater or first steek that you do it with some contrasting thread because it's a lot easier to see what you're working with. I'm going to be going through and using the same matching thread for my sweater when I do the final project. But let me show you how I do this here and see if I can get this on camera. So you're going to start all the way at the end, and the first thing that you have to do is kind of anchor yourself down here at the bottom, and I try to shoot for in between that middle stitch, and I'll call that one the steek stitch, and this bottom stitch here just because we're going kind of up and down. And hopefully you guys can see all of this. I can't really tell with the camera. So this bottom stitch is going to get anchored to the steek stitch. And I'm going to shoot for right in between the 2, and I'm just poking my crochet hook through and pulling up a loop. Oops, I kind of snagged some yarn there. So I'm pulling up a loop, and then I'm hooking the working yarn, and I'm going to pull it through the loop. So there I go. Look at that. I'm anchored in. I'm actually going to do that one more time in that same hole just to make sure that we're super anchored in there. I'm hooking and pulling up a loop and then pulling through the 2 loops on my needle. And that, if you don't know, is a single crochet. So now I get to do the fun part of crocheting up my steek. So I have my 3 stitches here. Let me see if I can get my crochet hook out so I can show you. So I have the 3 stitches here. Here's my bottom stitch. There's the 2 ladders of the bottom stitch. It looks kind of like a sideways heart right now. Here's my middle stitch, and then here is my top stitch. So what I'm going to be doing is anchoring the bottom leg of that steek stitch to the top leg of the crochet or the chain stitch on this side of the sweater. And I have to try to find that further down here. So I'm going to hunt around and try to find that first stitch, and I'm going to go in there. Oops, put my loop back on my hook. And I'm going to poke in through the bottom stitch and then pick up the top leg of the steek stitch. So you'll see I have the top leg of the bottom stitch and the bottom leg of the steek stitch. I'm going to hook and pull up a loop and then hook again and pull through the 2 of them. So I'm doing a single crochet for people who know. And my yarn that I'm showing you guys with is a little bit thicker than it should be for this size hook. So I apologize for that. And now I'm going to find the next stitch. So I'm looking and I have the next leg of my chain here, bottom stitch, top stitch, or I'm going the top leg of the bottom stitch and the bottom leg of the Steek stitch. I hook, I pull up a loop, I hook, I pull through 2. And we continue on. Bottom leg, top leg, hook, pull up a stitch, pull through 2. And then eventually what happens is it kind of parts ways by itself and it wants to be on top. So you can kind of see where I'm going to be going with my crochets. So I'm hooking and pulling through 2. I'm going to make sure I catch both sides of that. I hook, pull up a loop, hook, pull through 2. And what you're going to do is keep on moving up the entire length of the sweater in this manner. Hooking, pulling up a loop, hooking, pulling through 2 on every single stitch, which I know sounds horribly tedious, but it's really not that bad. I think the most awkward part is getting that first stitch started, and then after that you're done. So you're going to go up the entire side on that side, and then you're going to do it again on the other side. So you can see in here that I have the top, or the other half of the Steek stitch that I ran down the middle is sitting there waiting to get picked up, and here is the anchor stitch that I'm going to be anchoring it to. So what I'll do when I finish this side is I will crochet up the other side. I'll turn the sweater over and crochet up the other side. So I have this nice tidy crocheted single crochet going up one side, and I'll have a single crochet going up the other side. Now I'm going to do the whole sweater like this, but using the natural color that or the actual color of the yarn that I'm planning on using for my Steek, and then I'll show you guys how I cut. Here is the sweater that has been steeked. So here was the bottom side that I showed you before, so we are holding it like this. And you can see that I have a single crochet running down this side, and you can see the second half of that other stitch that's there, anchoring it to this side of the sweater. And then I did it again along this side, so I have a single crochet running all the way down, and here's the other half of that other stitch anchoring it to this side of the sweater. So my Steek stitch is buried in between the 2 stitches because it's getting pulled to either side. So the Steek stitch is basically getting split down the middle and anchored to either side of the sweater. And this is where our little scissors come into play. Sorry, I can't find my other ones. But there isn't a lot of cutting involved because all you're doing is popping these little ladders that run between your stitches. Because that's that Steek stitch right down the middle is basically where you're going to cut. So you kind of got to get in there for the first one just because it's that end. And then after that, you're just popping these little ladders. You don't want to cut any more than that because you don't want to cause any problems later. But you start cutting down the middle and pulling it apart as you go, just because it's easier to see what you're doing. Like I said, I did it with matching thread this time. In other sweaters in the past, I've done it with contrasting thread because I knew I was going to be picking up for a button band, and no one was going to see it except for me anyway. So I was kind of like, you know, if they're that close that they can see my Steek stitches on the inside of my sweater, then so be it. And it was a chunkier weight sweater, and I just used some leftover sock yarn that I had. And it was nice and easy, and I was able to see it. But with this sweater, I'm actually going to be seaming in this Steek and then putting in a zipper. So it's going to be pretty visible. And this is basically it. So, I don't want you guys to have to watch me cut this entire thing. But now I have this nice, neat, clean edge that I know won't go anywhere. So I'm going to end up anchoring this back like such, and then I'll have a space to sew in my zipper, and I'll have a nice clean knit line on the other side. Otherwise, if you were going to pick up for a button band, you would just, you know, tack this back and then pick up for your button band on that stitch there, and you'd be ready to go, and you can knit your button band. So it's a really nice, I like it because it's so clean and simple, and honestly, for how long, it doesn't take that long to crochet it. It would probably take me longer to get my sewing machine out and fight it. And like I said, I love how clean the line is. It's not a whole bunch of frayed stuff that I have to worry about.